How'd you like the rest?
You can come in. Just like you're doing. You're not yourself, but you're behind. And please be yourself. So Ms. Colburn was nice enough to leave us snacks. If you would like some snacks, get yourself a snack. And then if you could just sign in saying that you were here today.
There's coffee too.
Oh, and she made coffee. Thank you. You are all set. I love that song. All right, so we're going to start looking at what we need to do for next year so that we can give information to curriculum writers, whether you're a curriculum writer or not. So the first thing I want to do, we want to look at just the first 9 weeks so they have a place to jump off of. And we want to look at the pacing first. So as you go through your calendar for the first 9 weeks, I want you to look at the topics that we taught during that time. And I want you to look to see, is there anything that you feel like we needed to spend more time on? Or if there's anything where you felt like we gave it too much time and we could condense it down? Or is there something based on how the standards are being interpreted that we don't really even need to teach it anymore, like it can be eliminated from the curriculum to give us room for other things that we need to do? So we're going to take about 5 minutes to look at the curriculum map. Any questions for me?
I can write on this, right?
Please do so. And if y'all don't mind, play some groovy tunes. And you know, talk to one another, especially since we teach multiple grade levels.
For seventh grade, actually, I don't think seventh grade really needs this whole 4 days, because they already know how to make the graphs. I would focus more on like terminology and then like interpreting the graphs.
Because you're saying they don't have to make it for,
So they do have to construct graphs still, but they've done it in science in 6th grade and they do it in math in 6th grade. So I feel like my 7th graders know how to make the graphs.
so I think terminology would help because mine show with dependent versus independent and where to put them in the graph.
Yes.
They can, once they have it all done, they can plot the points and stuff, but knowing where to put what, they struggle with that, so if the terminology will.
Yeah, we're focusing on terminology, and then I feel like our tests have a lot of reading graphs and not just, like they have to explain trends and patterns on graphs. They can kind of just read it simply and tell me this is the point, but they can't like reach in the graph, like give me a trend or a pattern.
Right.
I think that would be more.
I see that with, I mean, that's 6th and 7th grade. Now it's, you know, the past, the leap, you used to have to construct a graph. Now it's just, here's some graphs, analyze what's happening. You know, so do I really want to spend a week teaching how to graph? Or maybe condense that down some and spend more of the time on analyzing graphs and identifying what the trends are? Because it looks like that's what the questions are
Right.
from those release test items are focusing on.
For 6th grade though, I do think the week is necessary because a lot of the 6th graders come in not knowing how to make an actual graph and they don't know the terminology.
Yeah.
And then if we spend the time in 7th grade analyzing them, they kind of get it all.
That makes sense, because a lot of the elementary schools aren't doing science the way they're supposed to be doing science.
So my
Even
6th
though it's
graders,
changing and getting better.
they struggle with analyzing them still, but they can't make them, and that's kind of step one.
I even found like that with some of my kids, they'll ask a question and say, is the trend increasing? But they didn't mean the entire graph. So because like the graph went up and down, you're like, well, no, because it was decreasing at the end. But overall, the trend is an increase. So I remember having to reiterate that with them.
Seventh grade will shorten it up, for sixth grade it's gonna be it.
What about, safety?
Safety is usually always put first for any grade level to give you like time to catch up on anything you missed and just review some basic classroom rules and safety things you need to know.
Normally we spend about 1 day per grade level on safety. And kind of just hit the basics.
Yeah, we don't spend a whole lot of time on safety either. Like the 8th grade, it was like 1 day. But I do find that as I start a new lab, I'm gonna go over safety again and what features apply to this lab. Because not all of them need goggles, not all of them need safety equipment. So as I start a lab, then I'll reiterate, okay, what are some of the things that we need to know here? I think for 8th grade, they need more time on the actual bonding, because those released items are more about bonding than they are about the periodic table. So that's where I was looking like, maybe I don't need to spend as much time on the periodic table, or like take a day from there, where I can add time to the actual bonding and how they bond, like how carbon bonds with, because I think we did a good job with like ionic and covalent bonding, but we didn't really build any models, and a lot of the standard is build a model, so I want to add more time for 8th grade for that.
And for sixth grade, they do a lot of just basic periodic table knowledge, so they
It
won't
should
need
be reviewed.
They won't need it as much in eighth grade.
About like a minute. I know I'm moving you fast, but I promise you I wouldn't take all the time.
Okay, well, for sixth grade, Chapman, I think season should be moved to before Luna cycle.
Oh, I saw that when I was pulling up your calendar. I'm like, I don't like the order that it's done.
This year, we kind of taught seasons before Luna cycle, but that should come first. And that,
Yeah, I agree. I really feel like you have to talk about rotation and revolution and the tilt and why that's happening. And then because of all of that, when it's lined up like this, an eclipse will happen. When I'm here, I can see this
Yes.
phase. I agree with that, moving that around. Good catch. And I didn't realize that until I pulled your calendar and I was trying to pull the standards and everything.
yeah.
Even tides, I would move to do closer to seasons when we're talking about.
I want to say for 8th grade, we used to do rotation and revolution, seasons,
Tides.
and tides all together. And then from there, we would do phases of the moon and eclipses. That was kind of the order that we followed when it was an 8th grade standard.
I think for seventh grade, all the time that we use for cells, we don't need that much because in sixth grade, they go through all of the organelles, they go through the cell theory. So for my students this year, it was the first year that they had done life science in sixth grade. My students came back knowing the cell theory, knowing the organelles, so we didn't have to focus a lot on that, maybe focus more on specialized cells, eukaryotic, prokaryotic. As far as the cell theory, we didn't need 2 days or
See.
I had them design a cell, so we spent 1 day on the cell theory and then they made the cells.
It's not until second. But for sixth grade, if you look at for October, when we did force and motion, we did balance and unbalanced forces, then potential and kinetic energy, then Newton's laws of motion, which I think should be,
With forces.
yeah, and that potential and kinetic should be after laws of motion. It just flows much easier.
And then graphing motion, I would put before energy as well, and get all of the motion stuff done, and then move into energy.
We kind of actually did 2 and 3 on the agenda together, like curriculum maps and moving things around. Are there any additional lessons? Like when we first started bonding, all I did was ionic and covalent bonding for 8th grade. But then, once they released a test item, and I was like, oh, look at that repeating pattern, that extended structure, and that was just 2 words inside the standard. I'm like, no, I didn't teach that, so I gotta find a way to go back and put that in. So what we wanna also look at is based on any like released test items that we've seen, or based on the assessments that we've given, are there any additional lessons that we need to add in? Like I need, like for bonding, I need to talk, I know I need to do how they bond, like the modeling of bonding, but I also need to add in there extended structures, because it was more about that repeating pattern than types of bonds. Like it really wasn't about, is this ionic or covalent, it was about how do they bond together to create those extended structures.
I would think for every topic, we need to add in a day where the topic has been taught and now they're doing kind of, not hands-on, it doesn't have to be a lab, but, analyzing pictures and graphs and articles that have to deal with the topics they've taught. When we get to the test, there's a lot of articles, images, graphs that they had to analyze. Time to teach it and then spend time getting deeper into the topic.
So exploring, analyzing more after topics.
Especially in 8th grade for me, like in 8th grade, there's a lot of that on their assessments.
And part of the problem is with everything being so new, trying to find articles that are on level, because a lot of times you'll find the stuff and it's so highly advanced. And even the people who created the test said the same thing, that by the time you try to get it down to a middle school level, you've lost a lot of the information in there. So we also want to look at any supplies that we would like in our fairy tale world. So this is fairy tale world. If you could have anything, what are some of the things you want to have? So I know in a past meeting I talked about wanting to have molecule models, and we have some, and we need to look to see do we have enough molecule models. Another thing I thought of, but I don't teach it anymore, but I saw it, who does density?
Sixth grade.
6th grade does density. Like the density cubes, but the ones that are not labeled, so they're all the same size cube, but they have different masses. And then they have to calculate the density to figure out what the block is actually made of. So those are 2 things that off the top of my head I'm gonna put on my supply list. And I don't like sitting all the time, so there's a 6th grade supply list, a 7th grade supply list, and an 8th grade supply list, so you can get up and move around, because I can't stand sitting in the chair, as you can see from me. Because nobody else is in charge of this one except me. So there's some things you know on hand, if you wanna go write it. And
So, Connie and I talked about this just yesterday, reading supplies that reach for all of our students and not just one class makes the model and everyone else looks at the model.
oh yeah, absolutely. Enough class sets of everything.
See if I have assessments too.
There's actually giant magnetic animal fan cells, and you can actually move the parts and that. So we got some around that. And then on the floating magnets. That help a lot too.
Even though we have a lot of microscope slides, we have a lot of good word, cooler slides. A lot of them are really hard to see when you put them under the microscope. Our microscopes are very basic.
I think I did find some lighted microscopes. I don't know if they work, but I did find some of that the other day.
Because the slides we have, there's another topic, but our microscopes that kids can't see. We have a lot of ones that are.
Also put online chemicals, like when we did, Lauren was out at the time, but when we did synthetic materials, like have, I ordered calcium chloride and sodium alginate. Maybe I'm on a hard time about it, so I got this ordered myself. Because telling them that I can put natural resources together and make something synthetic is much different than, here's this natural resource, here's this natural resource, here's this natural, okay, plug this plastic worm that we just made. So that kind of stuff, making sure that we have it and have it in enough time, like we can place an order ahead of time.
lotion, because some of it's getting like so thin, you can tell it's, you rub it, it's neon lotion, and it feeds the germs, and you hold it up in the black light. And some of the lotion is getting so thin.
I don't know if y'all would need this or not, I think I had to borrow yours, but, if you have the mini globes,
Yes, we have.
do we have a class set of those?
We have about 15, I found the other day.
So, I
I
mean,
think those came from a floss kit.
Yeah, it came from a boss, yeah, found 15 of them.
Right.
My kids use straighters and they put them together, and that's what we work around with plastic. Globes.
Alright. Alright, so, in future meetings, we'll look at like, second 9 weeks, third 9 weeks, fourth 9 weeks, as we use our PLC time to prepare for next year. Any thoughts, concerns, or questions? I promised I wouldn't take a lot of your time. I appreciate it. If I could have the calendars that you wrote on so I could create a Google Doc to share with Gina, and then I'll share it with you guys also. And that way, if you want to add more materials to it, like you think of something like, I would like this to help you teach that, we can just add it on, and you'll all be able to edit it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.